Conscious consumption. How sustainable is sustainability for a brand? We're going to hear a very interesting presentation on this topic by Joeri Bergh, CEO and Next Gen Specialist at Insights Consulting. He is the expert for brands, marketing, and advertising for children, teenagers, and young adults.
Thank you. We'll talk about sustainability. And there is this new disease called eco-anxiety that has been identified by American psychotherapists. And it includes high levels of stress that can lead to loss of appetite, insomnia, and even panic attacks. And it's related to climate change and the effects it has on our lives and on the planet. And it's real because in our Insights Consulting research in Europe, we saw that more than 6 out of 10 Europeans are quite frustrated about government that is not doing enough to limit the effects of climate change for them. It even leads to new demographic evolutions like eco-dinks. A dink is a double income, no kids. So these are women at childbearing age that decide not to have children because it would be either bad for the planet or they think it's not a good idea to put children on a planet that is burning. It leads to declining birth rates all across the world, and 1/3 of American women at childbearing age is saying we don't want to have children because of climate change. There, you will even find blogs and vlogs like Bird Strike, where there is statistics, scientific studies from the Lund University, for instance, in Sweden, as you can see on this slide, that says if you have 1 child less in your family, you're saving more CO2 emissions than becoming a vegan or driving an electric car. From all this worrying about the planet also comes worrying. And at first it started with students, young people, skipping school to protest, to have the climate protests. Before COVID-19, there were 7.5 million people at the same time protesting in the streets for this government to do more about climate change and to make the world Greta again, with Greta Thunberg as one of the known figureheads of this movement.
My favourite thing about the planet is the greenery.
The human beings and the creatures and just the space around us.
Where we create a bond with other people.
I really love nature, and sometimes it makes me feel sad how people are cutting down trees.
So LIGO already did this campaign just before the start of COP26, the climate change conference of the United Nations in Glasgow. And they created 10 instructions for policymakers that were based on interviews, research, and workshops with 9 to 19-year-olds. And as you can see, they give 10 building instructions to create a better world. But this is not just taking place among young generations. If we look into our research data, we see that more than 8 out of 10 European consumers are saying sustainability is really important. We did the same study before the COVID pandemic, and then it was lower, so it has not decreased because of the pandemic situation. There's 3/4 of consumers saying climate change is really important, and 2/3 that says in the long term it is as serious as COVID-19. But what does sustainability actually mean to European consumers? What is their definition of sustainability? Because it's quite a complex notion. When we look at the definition of sustainability, As you can see on this slide, it is complicated. And it's a combination of 3 different parts. If you look to the right of the slide, you will see that it's about doing better for yourself, for your own health. So that's related to bio, to organic, not using chemicals. But it's of course also related to doing better for the planet. So that's really the environmental responsibility we have. It's about recycling, reducing, reusing the energy, but also the CO2 emission, the transport, the packaging. And then to the left of the slide, you see doing better for society or for people. That includes inclusivity and equality, but also fair wages and fair trade. So really doing better for people. Now, this is one holistic concept. If you ask consumers what is sustainability, they're often a bit confused about these 3 different notions, which means that if they, for instance, are shopping bio vegetables in the grocery store and they see that they're packaged in plastics, it conflicts in their heads because they want to buy something natural that's good for their own health, to the right of this slide. But then they see plastics, and plastics are not doing well for the planet. So they say, how can this be a sustainable solution? In our research, we asked them, what are the top notions you get when you think about a concept as sustainability? And you see the green bars are 2019 data before the pandemic, and the golden bars are the ones really after the first lockdown, so in the full pandemic crisis. And one of the conclusions we can make is that a number of these elements are also related to the lockdown. You see, for instance, that reducing CO2 emissions and the notion of clean air became much more important during the lockdowns. And that's, of course, and the same goes with biodiversity and restoring nature. It's, of course, linked to the fact that during lockdowns, the only activities that many people were allowed to do around the world were related to nature. You could go on a hike or on your bike in nature, and that was it. So they revalued nature. They also saw the impact of a lockdown on the air quality in cities, and that has led to this definition of sustainability in the end. So CO2 emissions, they are becoming a new currency, you could say. And we are already witnessing that in many different industries, like in the dairy or dairy alternative industry, a player like Oatly is putting the CO2 emissions they're emitting for creating this Oatly product on the front of their package. And they're calling out the industry, as you can see to the left in billboard outdoor advertising, to do the same because they know a dairy alternative made from oat will have a better CO2 emission than cow milk in the end. Even in fashion, we see that Adidas has been working with Allbirds, a sustainable brand, to create a low-emission new sneaker, and they put the CO2 emission on the product, on the sneaker itself. Coming back to this graph and the top notions of sustainability, recycling programs are also on in the top 5. It's on number 2. And Hasbro, for instance, in 2018 was one of the first toy companies to start their own recycling program where you could send back your Hasbro tools and they would be recycled or upcycled in playing fields, for instance, for children. In the meanwhile, Mattel also has the playback program where you can download a shipping label for free and send your old Mattel toys back and they will be recycled into new toys, or converted into energy. Getting back to the graph, you can also see that in the top 3 there is reducing packaging and plastics. I will come back to plastics later on because it's really an important one in the toy industry. But looking at reducing packaging, this is an example of educational insights, a toy company that was redesigning their boxes for the design and drill product line to allow children to actually use the box, so use the inside of the packaging throughout the gameplay and create a longer life, extending the life of the packaging of the toy to become more sustainable. Now, when we have a look at these graph, the question could be, yes, Joeri, you talked about society and about people as well, but the top items here are all related to the environment. So where's the social? Where's the S of ESG issues in this graph? But when we look into the details of the data, we see that when we look only at the age cohort of the youngest ones, Generation Z or Generation Z, 15 to 25-year-olds, that these social aspects are much more important to them. For instance, LGBTQIA+ rights and gender equality is in the top 5 ESG concerns of Gen Z. It's no coincidence that DC Comics has announced that the new Superman is bisexual, for instance. And Disney Junior had a Muppet Babies episode in which Gonzo admitted that he prefers to wear dresses when he's going to the royal gala or the royal ball. At first his friends said, no, you're a boy, you should wear like a knight's costume, dresses are for girls. But at the end of the episode they say, sorry for that, we apologize, you're free to wear what you like, and they even use them and they pronouns to describe Gonzo. Not everyone was pleased with that, especially not conservative celebrities or extreme right-wing people. They said, we're actually reprogramming children here, and it is sick and perverted to do so. But in the end, society is evolving, and we're going towards a more progressive society, and the toy industry should follow. In Canada, for instance, or in California, there has been created a new law that enforces big retailers to create shelves in their stores that are gender neutral when it comes to selling toys. And Lego last year announced that they're working together with the Gina Davis Institute to audit the entire company and also the product lines to see if there's no gender bias or no harmful stereotypes that they're using. You can see this Lego City toy package on this slide, which is actually a wildlife rescue camp that is specifically designed to be appealing both to boys and girls with the same box of Lego bricks. And then there's also Mr. Potato Head that announced that they're leaving the Mr. in the potato head. And so now it's a gender-neutral potato head in which you can create males with ponytails or female characters with mustaches in the end, so gender-neutral families. There's also Crayola. Crayola worked together with the ex-R&D director of the cosmetics retailer MAC to be able to create crayons with which children can draw all possible skin tones that they need in their coloring activities. So these are different ESG strategies that you can do as a brand. But the question is, which one should you choose? Because there's so many things you can actually invest in. And obviously, there's two ways you can do. The first one is what we call defensive shields. And it means this is becoming the new norm. So if you don't invest in these, for instance, using less virgin plastics, less packaging, and your competitors are doing so, then you know that you will have some critique in society from your customers, from retailers, and also you're losing your market position. So it's quite defensive to do that. On the other hand, there's also strategies that you can do in which you really have a strength when you compare yourself to competition. And that is called a differentiator from competition. Let's have a look at two examples of that. Mattel, for instance, with the Barbie franchise. Mattel recently launched these 6 dolls, women that all played a crucial role during the pandemic. So we're talking about doctors here, but also a professor and a nurse around the world that really were important during the pandemic. It's clear that this is a defensive shield because they are showing that Barbie, even today, during the pandemic, but also in today's evolving progressive society, they are still relevant for our children and for our planet today. And we all know that Barbie and Mattel in the past years was able to turn around a negative evolution by stressing the active part and by changing the product to be in line actually with the trends that are happening in the toy industry. So this is the defensive shield of Mattel, you could say. On the other hand, they also created Mattel's Creatable World, which is a totally new toy line. And this allows kids to customize their own dolls completely free of gender norms. So it's a new line, it's a new business, and it's really a differentiator from competition. So to sum up this first part of the presentation, we talked about what does sustainability means today for citizens and consumers around the world in 2022. It's a holistic concept. It includes both environmental and social aspects, and brands can react in two ways: defensive on one hand, and on the other hand, offensive, you could call it, or really differentiating from competition. Now let's have a look at the consumer and the citizen and how we as humans are all changing our behavior. So what is the conscious mindset of today's consumer? And the good news is that the majority of consumers says, I want to change my habits, my own buying habits, the way I'm living, to contribute to a better environment. And when we ask them in detail, so if you do want to change yourself, what are you doing today? This is like the long list of everything that they're doing in their homes. And again, you have the green bars from 2019 compared to during the pandemic. What we see because of the pandemic is we spend more time at our homes because we're working remotely, for instance, or we're in a lockdown, which means everything related to home, recycling at home, reducing energy usage at home became more important. We also see that using up leftovers, so you could call it fridge management, became also more important. Looking at the top 5, you also see that plastics is there a couple of times. It's refusing plastic bags in shops, for instance, on one hand, but also avoiding single-use plastics in general. So, and this is really a challenge to the toy industry, plastics are a demon for our consumers and our clients. And apart from sugar, which was another demon for the soft drink industry, it's the reason why multinationals like Coca-Cola are making this transformation into rPET, recycled PET bottles, and starting with the small bottles and 100% rPET at this moment. It's also a challenge for the toy industry, and we already saw that Fisher-Price, for instance, has redesigned 2 of their classic toys for toddlers using completely plant-based sugarcane material. And Lego last year announced that after studying 250 different rPET formulations, they finally found one that they can actually use. And for Lego, the quality was more important than for other packaging, because of course the main product of Lego, the bricks, are made of this plastics. And they wanted to find rPET that has an even color, that has the right shine, that even has the right sound, but that is also durable in a sense that it won't lose its shape, for instance, when it's in a hot car, when you leave your Lego bricks inside your car. And they also had to have this clutch factor, which means that they should stick together well on one hand, and on the other hand, it should be possible to separate them quite easily as well. So many criteria, which led to many years of studying different rPET material, and in 2021, finally finding one with which, as you can see on the slide, they can recycle a 1 liter bottle into different Lego bricks to make it a really sustainable brand. Coming back to the habits of consumers at home, a bit lower in the top, you also see mending and repairing tools rather than replacing them, and trying to consume less, which means using stuff for a longer time, extending the lifetime of the products and the things we're using. In fashion, we are already witnessing that the resales or re-commerce market is growing much faster than the traditional retail market, with ThredUp, for instance, or Depop and Vinted. This is an example of H&M. It's a pilot project in Canada where they launched Rewear, and it allows you to easily buy and sell second-hand clothes, not only from H&M, but also from competitive brands, as you can see on the slide, Tommy Hilfiger, for instance, or Levi's. And H&M is just taking a 15% commission when you sell something on their platform. Also in the furniture business, IKEA has buyback schemes, and you can bring back your furniture and you get a voucher that you can use on new furniture at IKEA. Now, when we looked into the conscious behavior of consumers, we saw that there's about 1/2 of European consumers that are saying, we don't think we are really living sustainably. And when we asked why not, they said, well, there are some barriers. And one main barrier of living sustainable is convenience, of course. It's also the reason why, on one hand, Generation Z is buying thrifted clothes or vintage clothes, but on the other hand, brands like Shein, but also Primark are still very popular with this generation because convenience is still important. When looking at the 50% that says it's very hard to live more sustainably, these are the main barriers to them. And the first one is it's too expensive, because sustainable alternatives are often more expensive than non-sustainable alternatives, and we don't want to pay more for sustainable alternatives. Or they say they're too hard to get, they're not so accessible, I don't know where to find them, they're less convenient as well, or I just forget to live sustainable. And also, some of them say, I wouldn't know which brands are more sustainable than other brands, and I don't know how to live more sustainably myself. So I need more guidance, which is the education barrier, you could call it. These are 5 barriers on which you can work as a brand. You can do something with these in your campaigns, in your product launches. For instance, Lego Replay in the US and Canada, working together with the Give Back box, allows you to drop your old Lego bricks in a box, download a free shipping label, and then send it to Give Back box. That will, it's a non-government organization, a social enterprise that will clean the toys, repackage them, and then send them to charity as well. Another way of working on these barriers is reminding and rewarding. And this is Hasbro that has launched the most sustainable playing board, actually, or board game with a Monopoly Go Green. So it's made of 100% recycled paper. The greenhouses and the dice are made of FSC wood, and the coins are made of sugarcane alternative to plastics. But the main thing is actually reminding consumers to live more sustainably, and also in the gameplay you get rewarded when you green up or clean up your properties in Monopoly. Another example is Lego in Poland. Lego in Poland, during the first pandemic lockdown, they wanted to help schools to educate children about climate change, and then they did this following campaign. So a nice example of how a brand, and Lego in this case, is educating and is working together with schools to change also policymakers again. So this second part was about how are consumers living more sustainably. We talked about the say-do gap, so the difference between the sustainable mindset and what you're really doing at home, and some barriers to living more sustainably. Convenience is a big enemy of sustainability, which means that brands can really work on changing this in the way that they're actually communicating about their products. So it's about educating, about reminding consumers that it's not necessarily more expensive to live more sustainably, that sustainable alternatives are accessible, and that it's easy and rewarding to live more sustainably. We come to the last part of the presentation, which is called Good Business is Good Business. So it's on the business model of creating sustainable alternatives. When we look into the results of the study, we see that it really helps to create sustainable brands. 42% of consumers say that sustainable brands have a higher quality. So it's a perception when you make sustainability claims. Sustainable brands are also more up to date. More than half of consumers in our study agree with this statement. And 7 out of 10 say, I feel more positive when a company is really making efforts to reduce its carbon footprint. So there's 4 benefits of sustainable branding. It's about creating more preference and creating more awareness about the brands. You're defending your brand image and your reputation. It gives you a license to operate, and you don't risk to get attacked by NGOs like Greenpeace. It can lead to relevant innovations and market developments. I already gave some examples, and I will give you another example. And the last thing is also important when in this war of talent, when we want to engage Generation Y or millennial employees or Gen Z employees, we know that they're looking for a company that does more to create a better world, that really has a purpose in their job as well. So also on employer branding, it really works. One example from Jada Toys is the Be Kind doll. This doll is completely made of recyclable material, and also the packaging is made from recyclable and recycled materials and can be repurposed. For instance, the handle of the box can be reused as a bracelet, and the box itself can also be used during gameplay. Now, one final conclusion is that when I talk to companies, they are often a bit hesitant about communicating their sustainability strategies and long-term plans. And one of the reasons is they say, we are on a journey, on an evolution. We're not 100% sustainable yet, and we will only communicate when we really get there, which is a bad idea, because in our research, we know that 7 out of 10 consumers say that if a brand is not communicating that they're doing something about sustainability, they're not a sustainable brand. And it makes sense to communicate your plans, your commitments, and what you're doing today already, because otherwise you lose this market potential to your competitors who are doing so. Keep in mind that when communicating, there are 4 golden rules, and that's the last part of this presentation. The first one is always talk about your long-term commitment, because if you, for instance, only would change your colors of your packaging during Pride Month to rainbow colors, then you risk of being seen as greenwashing or rainbow washing or purpose washing. So you must prove that you're actually serious about your commitment and becoming more sustainable yourself by talking about long-term commitments. But it's not enough, because if you only talk about 2030, 2050, then consumers are frustrated as well. They say, okay, but what are you doing today? So also show me what you have done today. Third rule is always be open and transparent about your commercial motives, because many of the sustainable things we're launching also have commercial motives. We want to dive into a new target market, or we want to lower our costs, for instance. And it's good to be transparent about that, because we're still living in a post-greenwash age. Also keep your tone of voice. Because too often we see that sustainability campaigns are taken over by the PR department and the CEO, not the marketing department, which leads to a totally different tone of voice, totally different media channels like LinkedIn. And in the end, you won't reach your customers. And at the same time, you're communicating to your own employees, oh, this is just a PR campaign. It's not our day-to-day business, so we're not really serious about it. So again, you risk of being seen as a greenwasher. One last example is Lego. Lego has pledged to only use sustainable Lego bricks by 2030 and only have recyclable and recycled packaging by 2025. And in the meantime, they've also already launched Plants from Plants in 2018.
In the Brazilian tropical air, a sugarcane is slowly waving, waiting for its big adventure. But it never expected it would be turned into Lego elements and join the Lego Group's sustainable materials mission.
It's the incredible creature Plantus Maximus.
Plantus Maximus was very excited to tell his Lego brick friends what happened, how sugarcane was used to create Lego elements sustainably, and how one day all Lego creatures will be just like Plantus.
Using his blasters, Plantus jumped to the planet Bouncy Ball, but the whole planet started spinning around.
Okay.
Using his Sustainus cannon, he turned the whole planet green.
Wow.
Then he brought his new friends back home to the sugarcane field. And his friends also became superheroes and went off to continue the big mission.
The big mission that all Lego bricks will be made from sustainable materials by 2030.
So to sum up this last part of the presentation, we talked about the 4 benefits of sustainable branding. It's when you're not communicating about sustainability, you're also communicating that you're not sustainable, and the 4 rules of communicating about sustainability. So there is a good reason to do it, not just to make the kids not angry or Greta Thunberg not angry. And I would like to thank you for your attention and wish you good luck on your sustainable journey.